Most people don't fail financially because they're lazy. They fail because they were taught the wrong game. They were taught to chase salaries, to trade hours for paychecks, to hope that one day raises, promotions, or luck would finally make them feel safe. And yet, the more they earn, the more anxious they become. Because the problem was never income. The problem was control. Money flows through their life like water through open hands, in one side, out the other. You're always moving, never building. If that sounds familiar, stay here, because this audiobook is not about getting rich. It's about getting free. This is Cash Flow Mastery. And in this audiobook, you will learn how to stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like a system builder. You will discover why the wealthy obsess over flow, not pay, why freedom comes from structure, not hustle, and why money is meant to be a servant, never a master. Here's the truth most people never hear. A salary is not security. It's dependency disguised as comfort. And the moment you understand that, everything changes. In the next few hours, we'll walk through this journey together, not with hype, not with fantasies, but with clarity. We'll dismantle the myths you were taught about money. We'll rebuild your financial thinking from the inside out. And we'll design systems that continue working even when you stop. This audiobook is educational, not financial advice, but it is a mental reset. And mental resets change lives. Here's the punchline that most people never forget once they hear it. If your money needs you to survive, you are never free. Let that land, because this is where the shift begins. Chapter by chapter, you'll learn how to see money as movement, not possession, how to separate effort from reward, how to design cash flow streams that outlive your attention, and how to build financial calm in a world addicted to noise. And before we go any further, make a quiet agreement with yourself. If this resonates, stay until the end. If a sentence hits you in the chest, remember it. And if you feel clarity where there used to be confusion, consider liking this audiobook as a promise to yourself, not to us. Now, let's begin at the root of the problem, because before you can master cash flow, you must understand why most people never do. Chapter 1. Most people think money is something you earn. That belief alone keeps them trapped from childhood. You're taught a simple equation. Work hard, get paid, repeat. It sounds responsible. It sounds mature. It sounds safe. But no one tells you what that equation leaves out. They don't tell you that income without structure collapses, that effort without systems decays, that money without direction disappears. A salary is a stream, not a foundation, and streams that aren't guided flood or dry up. The paycheck mindset creates urgency, not ownership. It trains you to focus on arrival dates, not outcomes, on how much comes in, not how long it lasts. That's why two people can earn the same income and live in completely different realities. One feels trapped, the other feels calm, not because of intelligence, but because of design. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't manage money. They react to it. They check balances. They feel relief or panic. They adjust behavior emotionally. That is not mastery. That is survival. Cash flow mastery begins when money stops being emotional and starts becoming mechanical. When each dollar has a job before it arrives. When movement is intentional. When nothing is left to chance. Think of your finances like a city. Without roads, traffic becomes chaos. Without signals, accidents multiply. Without planning, growth destroys itself. Money behaves the same way. And yet, most people never build roads. They just hope traffic clears. They hope next month is easier. They hope expenses calm down. They hope motivation saves them. Hope is not a strategy. Systems are. Here's a question that quietly changes lives when answered honestly. If your income stopped tomorrow, how long would your lifestyle survive? Not emotionally, mathematically. That answer reveals everything, because cash flow mastery is not about abundance. It's about resilience. It's not about having more. It's about needing less control from effort. The financially free don't wake up asking, how do I earn more today? They ask, how does my system perform today? That's the difference. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. In the next chapter, we're going to expose the most dangerous illusion in modern finance, the belief that stability comes from earning. Because the moment you stop chasing income, you finally begin building freedom. Dear viewer, we strive to create high-quality videos for you. Please assist us in improving our efforts by commenting on what you like about the video and what you would change or add. We would be very grateful. Chapter 2. The most dangerous financial lie ever sold is this one. Earn more and everything gets easier. It sounds logical, it feels responsible, and it quietly keeps millions of people exhausted for decades. Because earning more without changing structure doesn't create freedom. It creates a larger cage. Every raise expands lifestyle. Every bonus invites new obligations. Every promotion increases dependence on performance. The moment income rises, spending adapts. Pressure follows. And suddenly, the person making more money feels more trapped. Not because they failed, but because they never changed how money moves. Here is the shift you must make right now. Income is a tool. Cash flow is the weapon. Income is what you receive. Cash flow is what you control. And control is the foundation of calm. Think about this carefully. A salary arrives in bursts. Bills arrive continuously. That mismatch alone creates stress. You wait. You brace. You catch up. That's not stability. That's rhythm-based anxiety. Cash flow mastery means smoothing life. It means creating consistency where chaos used to live. It means designing systems that don't spike your nervous system every month. Most people don't realize they are financially reactive. They only realize they're tired. They don't feel poor. They feel hunted by time. And that's because their money system requires constant attention. True wealth reduces attention cost. The wealthy are not smarter. They are less involved. Their systems handle repetition. Their rules eliminate decision fatigue. Their money flows even when motivation disappears. That's the goal. And it begins with one uncomfortable realization. Your effort is expensive. Every hour you trade is fragile. Every paycheck tied to presence is vulnerable. Every lifestyle dependent on labor is temporary. This is not pessimism. This is precision. Cash flow mastery is learning how to detach survival from effort. Not all at once, not recklessly, but deliberately. Most people never do this because they confuse busyness with progress. They mistake motion for momentum. But motion is exhausting. Momentum is quiet. Momentum comes from systems repeating themselves. Rent that arrives whether you wake up early or not. Dividends that land while you sleep. Businesses that earn without your hands on the wheel every minute. This isn't fantasy, it's architecture. But before we talk about building streams, we must address the invisible enemy. Spending identity. Most people don't spend money. They express themselves with it. They reward stress. They soothe insecurity. They buy symbols of arrival before building foundations. And that emotional spending destroys cash flow faster than low income ever could. Cash flow mastery demands emotional neutrality with money. Not fear, not obsession. Neutrality. Money becomes numbers. Numbers become signals. Signals inform decisions. No guilt. No excitement. Just clarity. Ask yourself this. Do you know exactly where your money flows after it arrives? Not roughly, not kind of, exactly. If the answer is no, you are not in control yet. And that's okay, because awareness always precedes power. In the next chapter, we're going to slow everything down. We're going to examine the quiet discipline that separates survivors from builders. Because before you can multiply money, you must first command it. Dear viewers, write which city you're from. It's interesting to see which corners of the world are watching our videos. Chapter 3. Command always comes before growth. Most people want expansion before control. They want more streams before understanding the leak. They want freedom before discipline. But money doesn't respect desire. It responds to structure. Cash flow mastery begins with something unglamorous, something quiet, something most people avoid because it forces honesty. Tracking, not guessing, not approximating, tracking. You cannot command what you refuse to observe. Most people are afraid to look closely at their numbers because numbers don't lie. They don't soften truth. They don't negotiate with comfort. They show reality exactly as it is. And reality at first can feel heavy. But here's what most people don't realize. Clarity reduces anxiety faster than ignorance ever could. When you know where your money goes, fear loses its imagination. Unknown expenses stop haunting you. Surprises become rare. And power begins quietly returning. Think of money like employees. If you had workers showing up every month and you never assigned them tasks, you wouldn't be surprised when nothing gets built. Unassigned dollars behave the same way. They wander, they disappear, they accomplish nothing. Cash flow mastery is leadership. Every dollar needs instructions. Where it goes, why it exists, what outcome it serves. This is not about restriction, it's about direction. Most people resist budgets because they associate them with punishment. But a budget is not a cage, it's a map. It shows you where you are. It shows you where you're bleeding. It shows you what's working. And once you have a map, movement becomes intentional. Here's a truth worth remembering. Freedom comes from boundaries, not absence of them. When you give money boundaries, it stops controlling you. When you remove boundaries, it starts dictating your behavior. Cash flow mastery is not about cutting joy. It's about designing sustainability. Spending without awareness creates pleasure followed by stress. Spending with intention creates calm followed by confidence. That difference compounds. Now listen closely. This phase is not permanent. You are not meant to track forever with intensity. You are meant to track long enough to build systems that no longer need attention. Discipline builds automation. Automation builds freedom. The wealthy do not obsess over money. They obsess over systems that remove obsession. And the system always begins with visibility. Income in, expenses out. Net movement revealed. No shame, no judgment, just data. Because once data is visible, decisions become obvious. You start asking better questions. Why is this recurring? Does this expense produce value or just comfort? Is this purchase building tomorrow or numbing today? Those questions quietly reshape behavior, not through force, through understanding. And when understanding deepens, discipline stops feeling heavy. It starts feeling logical. In the next chapter, we're going to dismantle one of the most misunderstood concepts in personal finance: the difference between being busy with money and being effective with money. Because most people work harder than necessary simply because they never learned how to separate activity from outcome. Chapter 4. Most people confuse movement with progress. They check balances. They shuffle money around. They open apps. They feel productive, but nothing actually improves because activity is not effectiveness. Cash flow mastery is not about touching money more often. It's about touching it less with better rules. Here's the quiet truth. The more decisions your money requires, the less free you are. Every moment spent reacting to finances is a moment stolen from creation, focus, or rest. The wealthy understand this early. They reduce decision points. They eliminate friction. They design defaults that work even when discipline fades. Most people do the opposite. They rely on willpower. They negotiate with themselves monthly. They make the same choices again and again emotionally. Willpower always fails eventually. Systems don't. This is where the idea of thinking in systems, not salaries, becomes real. A salary asks, "How much do I get paid?" A system asks, "What happens automatically after money arrives?" That question changes everything, because once money enters your life, it should already know where to go. Savings shouldn't depend on mood. Investments shouldn't depend on motivation. Bills shouldn't depend on memory. Everything essential should happen without negotiation. Cash flow mastery is the art of pre-deciding. You decide once, calmly, so you don't have to decide again, emotionally. Think of it like gravity. You don't argue with gravity every morning. You design around it. Money systems work the same way. Set percentages, create automatic transfers, build barriers between spending and survival. When money must pass through layers before being spent, impulse loses power. This is not restriction. This is protection. Most people fail financially not because they lack knowledge, but because their systems are fragile. One emergency, one emotional week, one unexpected expense, and everything collapses. Resilient systems assume failure will happen. They plan for inconsistency. They build buffers. They respect human weakness. Cash flow mastery respects reality. You will get tired. You will feel tempted. You will make mistakes. So the system must survive you. Here's a powerful reframe. Your job is not to be disciplined forever. Your job is to build something that works when you're not. That's mastery. And once systems are in place, something unexpected happens. Money stops being loud. It stops interrupting your thoughts. It stops creating background stress. It stops demanding attention. Silence replaces anxiety. And in that silence, you begin to think differently. Not in weeks, not in months, but in years. Long-term thinking is impossible under financial pressure. Cash flow mastery removes that pressure first. In the next chapter, we'll explore the moment where most people sabotage themselves. The moment money increases and identity interferes. Because earning more doesn't test your strategy. It tests your character. Chapter 5. Money doesn't just test your math. It tests your identity. This is where most people lose control. Quietly. The moment income increases, something subtle happens inside the mind. Not confidence, not relief, permission. Permission to upgrade life before upgrading structure. Permission to relax discipline. Permission to reward effort before securing the future. The raise comes in. the bonus hits, and suddenly restraint feels unnecessary. I earned this. I deserve this. I'll get back on track next month. That sentence has delayed more freedom than bad luck ever could, because cash flow mastery is not destroyed by poverty. It's destroyed by celebration without strategy. Here's the pattern that traps millions. Income rises, lifestyle expands, fixed expenses lock in, and now you're back where you started, except with nicer furniture and heavier pressure. This is lifestyle inflation, and it's one of the most efficient freedom killers ever invented. Not because comfort is bad, but because premature comfort creates permanent obligation. Cash flow mastery demands delayed identity upgrades. You don't upgrade your life when income increases. You upgrade your systems. You don't ask, "What can I afford now?" You ask, "What does this income unlock long term?" That mindset shift separates temporary earners from permanent builders. The wealthy don't rush to display success. They rush to stabilize it. They know that every recurring expense is a chain, light at first, heavy over time. Freedom isn't having more things. Freedom is having fewer mandatory payments. Let that sink in. A person with lower income and low obligations often has more real freedom than someone earning double with heavy fixed costs. Cash flow mastery prioritizes optionality, the ability to pause, to pivot, to say no. Optionality is the real currency, and optionality only exists when expenses are intentionally capped. This is why the wealthy often look boring at first. Same car, same routines, same lifestyle. But beneath that simplicity is strength. They are buying time. They are buying flexibility. They are buying the right to move without fear. Identity-based spending does the opposite. It locks you into who you were trying to prove you are. Cash flow mastery asks a dangerous question. Who am I without what I buy? That question makes most people uncomfortable, so they keep spending. But once you answer it honestly, money stops controlling your self-worth. And that's when things accelerate. In the next chapter, we're going to break one of the biggest myths holding people back from financial systems. The myth that you need massive capital to begin. Because cash flow mastery doesn't start with money, it starts with structure. Chapter 6. One of the most paralyzing beliefs about money is this: I'll start once I have more. More income, more time, more knowledge, more confidence. That belief feels reasonable, and it quietly delays progress forever. Because cash flow mastery does not begin with abundance. It begins with alignment. Most people think systems are for later, after success arrives. The truth is the opposite. Systems are what allows success to arrive without chaos. You don't build systems because you're rich. You build systems so you don't have to rely on luck. Think about this carefully. If your financial life feels fragile right now, adding more money without structure will only amplify the fragility. More zeros don't fix broken foundations. They expose them. Cash flow mastery starts small on purpose. Small percentages, small habits, small rules repeated consistently. Because repetition builds trust with yourself. When money is limited, systems matter more, not less. A person earning modest income with strong structure often builds freedom faster than someone earning more with disorder. Why? Because structure compounds. Discipline practiced early becomes automatic later. Chaos practiced early becomes harder to undo later. Here's a powerful mental shift. Stop asking, "How much do I need to start?" Start asking, "What rule can I put in place today?" Rules create momentum. A rule like, every dollar that enters gets divided immediately. Every increase goes to systems before lifestyle. Every recurring expense must justify its existence. These rules don't require wealth. They require decision. And decision is free. Cash flow mastery is the practice of creating inevitability. Not hoping things improve, not wishing discipline appears, but designing outcomes that happen whether you feel like it or not. That's why thinking in systems beats thinking in salaries. A salary ends. A system adapts. A salary depends on approval. A system depends on structure, and systems don't care how you feel. They execute. In the next chapter, we're going to confront one of the most uncomfortable ideas in personal finance, the idea that security is not found in saving alone, because saving without flow creates stagnation, and stagnation quietly erodes freedom. Chapter 7. Saving feels safe. That's why it's seductive. For most people, saving money becomes the final goal, the emergency fund, the buffer, the quiet reassurance that something is there just in case. And don't misunderstand this. Saving matters. It's necessary. It's foundational. But saving alone is not mastery. Saving without flow is stagnation. Money that only sits eventually loses relevance. Inflation erodes it. Fear guards it. And hesitation freezes it. Cash flow mastery is not about hoarding. It's about movement with purpose. Here's the distinction most people never learn. Saving protects you from emergencies. Cash flow protects you from dependency. Saving is defensive. Cash flow is offensive. Both matter, but they serve different roles. If all your financial energy goes into saving, you build a wall, but no engine. You feel safe, but stuck. Calm, but limited. Protected, but dependent on continued effort. True freedom requires circulation. Money must move, return, and repeat. That's what cash flow does. It creates cycles. Income arrives. Portions protect. Portions deploy. Returns reinforce the system. That loop, repeated, is what slowly detaches survival from labor. Most people never reach this stage because they confuse risk with recklessness. They were taught that anything beyond saving is dangerous. That movement equals gambling. That staying still equals responsibility. But stillness carries risk too. The risk of irrelevance, the risk of erosion, the risk of time passing without leverage. Cash flow mastery is learning how to move money intelligently, not impulsively. Movement with rules, movement with limits, movement with intention. This is where systems matter more than courage. You don't feel ready to build flow. You design guardrails that allow movement without collapse, small allocations, clear criteria, defined downside. That's how professionals operate. Emotionless, methodical, patient. They don't chase returns. They build processes, and processes outlive moods. In the next chapter, we'll talk about leverage, not the reckless kind, but the quiet kind most people overlook, the kind that multiplies effort without multiplying stress. Because the goal of cash flow mastery is not working harder with money. It's making money work when you don't. Chapter 8. Most people misunderstand leverage. They think leverage means debt, risk, pressure. But real leverage is quieter than that. Real leverage is when one decision keeps paying you back long after the effort is finished. That's the leverage cash flow mastery is built on. Time leverage, system leverage, decision leverage. Think about this. If every dollar you earn requires the same amount of effort forever, you are capped. Your energy has limits. Your time has ceilings. Your focus burns out. Cash flow mastery is about uncapping life, not through force, through multiplication. And multiplication doesn't come from doing more. It comes from designing smarter. Leverage begins the moment you ask, how can this action repeat without me? That question alone separates builders from laborers. A system that earns once is income. A system that earns repeatedly is cash flow. And the repetition is the magic. Most people chase big wins because repetition feels slow. But repetition compounds quietly while excitement fades. Cash flow mastery respects patience. It understands that boring systems outperform exciting ones if given time. That's why wealthy systems often look unimpressive at first. Small margins, steady movement, unremarkable beginnings. But under the surface, something powerful is happening. Consistency is stacking. Processes are refining. Risk is decreasing as scale increases. And slowly, effort decouples from reward. That's leverage. The mistake most people make is trying to leap to the end. They want massive flow without structure, returns without rules, freedom without foundations. And when it doesn't work, they retreat to safety, telling themselves systems aren't for them. But systems don't require genius. They require patience. You don't need to understand everything. You need to start something repeatable. Cash flow mastery is not a sprint. It's alignment over time. The moment you stop measuring success by speed and start measuring it by sustainability, your strategy matures. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about something rarely discussed in money conversations: energy. Because how you feel about money shapes how it behaves in your life. And until your nervous system feels safe around finances, no system will ever fully stick. Please like and subscribe if you want a better future for your children, your family, and yourself. It's very difficult to achieve success today, but I'm sure you'll succeed. All you have to do is learn and discover new things. Chapter 9. Most people think money stress is about numbers. It isn't. It's about safety. Your nervous system doesn't care about spreadsheets. It cares about predictability. Uncertainty keeps it alert. Volatility keeps it tense. Surprises keep it reactive. And when your nervous system is activated, long-term thinking disappears. This is why so many smart people make terrible money decisions under pressure. Not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack calm. Cash flow mastery is as much emotional architecture as it is financial design. When income is inconsistent, expenses feel threatening. When bills arrive unpredictably, your body braces. And when the body is braced, you seek relief, not strategy. That relief often looks like avoidance, or impulsive spending, or freezing completely. This is not weakness. It's biology, which means the solution is not motivation. It's regulation. Cash flow mastery creates calm by smoothing money movement, predictable inflows, controlled outflows, buffers between you and chaos. The goal is not excess. The goal is steadiness. Steady money creates steady thinking. Steady thinking creates better decisions. Better decisions compound. This is why systems matter so much. A system doesn't just manage money. It calms the mind. When you know bills are covered automatically, savings are building without effort, cash flow continues even when energy dips, your body relaxes, and relaxed minds think long term. This is where people misunderstand discipline. Discipline is not forcing yourself through stress. Discipline is designing life so stress is reduced. The best financial system is the one that asks the least of your emotions. That's mastery. And once calm is established, a new question naturally emerges. If I'm no longer reacting, what can I build? That question marks the transition from survival to strategy. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about time horizons, because the way you measure time determines the kind of wealth you build. And most people are playing a short game without realizing it. Chapter 10. Most people live in 30-day windows. They think paycheck to paycheck, bill to bill, month to month. And without realizing it, they train their mind to expect life in fragments. Short time horizons create short strategies. You react instead of design. You patch instead of build. You chase relief instead of momentum. Cash flow mastery requires stretching your sense of time, not into fantasy, into realism. Ask yourself this: if nothing changed except your systems, where would you be in 3 years? Not 6 months, not next year, 3 years. That question instantly exposes whether you are building or just coping. Short-term thinking feels urgent. Long-term thinking feels boring at first. But boring is where freedom hides, because the longer your time horizon, the calmer your decisions become. You stop rushing, you stop forcing, you stop panicking over small fluctuations. You realize something powerful. Time is the real multiplier. Cash flow mastery is the art of aligning money with long-term inevitability. Not what works now, but what keeps working later. That's why systems beat hustle. Hustle burns time. Systems harvest it. When your systems are aligned with long horizons, you stop asking, "How do I win this month?" and start asking, "What compounds if I leave it alone?" That's when life changes pace. Because compounding does not feel dramatic. It feels invisible until it isn't. This is where most people quit. They don't see immediate transformation. They don't feel instant payoff, so they assume nothing is happening. But under the surface, alignment is forming. Cash flow mastery is trusting delayed results. Not blindly, but strategically. You know the math. You know the structure. You know the rules, and because you know them, you can wait. Waiting with clarity is not stagnation, it's confidence. In the next chapter, we're going to address a silent threat to long-term cash flow systems: distraction. Because even the best systems fail when attention is scattered, and mastery requires more than money discipline. It requires focus. Chapter 11. Distraction is the silent killer of financial systems, not because it destroys money directly, but because it erodes consistency. Cash flow mastery does not require constant brilliance. It requires sustained attention in the right places and complete neglect everywhere else. Most people scatter their focus across too many financial ideas: a new strategy every month, a new app every season, a new plan every time emotion spikes. They are always working on money, but nothing compounds, because compounding demands stillness. The mind that jumps resets progress repeatedly. The system never matures. The roots never deepen. Cash flow mastery demands fewer inputs, not more, fewer strategies, fewer accounts, fewer decisions. Depth beats breadth. This is why wealthy systems often look simple, not because they lack sophistication, but because sophistication has been distilled. They removed what didn't matter. They kept what repeated. And repetition is where leverage lives. Here's a hard truth. If your financial plan requires daily attention, it's fragile. Strong systems run quietly in the background. They don't ask for motivation. They don't demand inspiration. They don't break when you have a bad week. They assume distraction will happen, and they survive it. Cash flow mastery is building systems that tolerate your humanity. You will lose focus sometimes. You will care about other things. Life will pull attention away. The system must endure that. This is why automation is not laziness. It's respect for reality. You automate not because you're weak, but because you understand yourself. The less your finances rely on focus, the more focus you regain for building life. That reclaimed focus is priceless. Because money is not the goal. Capacity is. Capacity to think, capacity to create, capacity to choose. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about choice. Because true wealth is not about accumulation. It's about the number of doors you can walk through without fear. And cash flow mastery is the key that quietly unlocks them. Chapter 12. Choice is the quiet luxury most people never reach. Not the illusion of choice, the real kind. The kind where decisions are not made out of fear, not rushed by bills, not pressured by survival. Most people believe freedom comes from having options, but options without stability are just stress in disguise. Cash flow mastery creates grounded choice, the ability to pause, to decline, to walk away, not dramatically, not impulsively, calmly. Because when cash flow is stable, urgency disappears. And when urgency disappears, clarity arrives. This is why people with unstable finances often feel stuck, even when opportunities appear. They can't take risks, they can't pivot, they can't pause long enough to think. Every decision feels heavy because the margin for error is thin. Cash flow mastery widens that margin. It gives you room to breathe, and breathing room changes everything. You stop asking, "What do I have to do?" and start asking, "What do I want to build?" That shift is subtle, but permanent. Once you experience choice without fear, you can't go back. This is where cash flow mastery becomes personal. Because money stops being the center. Life becomes the focus. And money simply supports it. In the next chapter, we'll talk about something most financial advice avoids. The role of patience. Not passive patience, strategic patience. Because systems reward those who can wait without drifting. And mastering that skill is where long-term wealth quietly forms. Dear viewer, please write in the comments what interested you most in the video. This will help us improve our videos. Chapter 13. Patience is not waiting. Waiting is passive. Patience is active restraint. Most people confuse the two and pay for it with time. They wait for motivation. They wait for certainty. They wait for proof. And while they wait, nothing compounds. Cash flow mastery requires a different posture. You act early, then you wait deliberately. You build the system, then you give it space to work. This is uncomfortable for people raised on instant feedback. Modern life rewards speed. Money systems reward endurance. The paradox is simple. Those who rush or slow themselves down. Those who pace themselves arrive faster. Because compounding does not respond to urgency. It responds to consistency. Cash flow mastery teaches you to respect process. You don't interfere constantly. You don't panic at small fluctuations. You don't abandon systems because results feel slow. You measure health, not excitement. Is the system functioning as designed? Is flow stable? Is downside controlled? If yes, you wait. Waiting with confidence is a skill, and like any skill, it must be trained. Most people sabotage compounding because boredom scares them. They confuse silence with stagnation. They assume calm means nothing is happening. But under the surface, alignment is strengthening. Roots are deepening. Systems are stabilizing. Momentum is forming invisibly. Cash flow mastery rewards those who can sit still while growth is invisible. In the next chapter, we'll talk about the moment growth becomes visible and why that moment is actually dangerous. Because success introduces temptation, and without discipline, expansion can undo everything you've built. Chapter 14. Growth is seductive. That's the danger. When systems start working, when cash flow becomes visible, when numbers finally move in your favor, ego wakes up, and ego wants proof. Proof that the struggle meant something. Proof that you've arrived. Proof that others should notice. This is where many systems collapse, not because they were weak, but because restraint disappeared too early. Cash flow mastery is tested most when success becomes obvious. The temptation is always the same: to accelerate spending faster than structure, to expand lifestyle before reinforcing foundations, to turn momentum into display. But systems don't care about appearances. They care about resilience. And resilience is built quietly, even when success is loud. This is why the truly wealthy often look underwhelming at first glance. They resist the urge to celebrate publicly. They delay gratification privately. They understand a brutal truth: early success is fragile, and fragility demands protection, not exposure. Cash flow mastery teaches you to treat growth like a young flame. Shield it, feed it. Don't show it off, because once obligations rise faster than flow, pressure returns, and pressure kills patience. The moment your lifestyle needs your system to perform perfectly, you've reintroduced risk. Mastery is ensuring your systems can underperform and you still remain calm. That margin is everything. In the next chapter, we'll talk about scale. Not reckless expansion, intentional scale. Because growth that doesn't change structure is just bigger chaos. And cash flow mastery scales differently than most people expect. Chapter 15. Scale is not growth. Scale is stability under pressure. Most people assume scaling means doing more. More income, more projects, more complexity. That assumption destroys systems. Cash flow mastery scales by simplification, not expansion. The question is never, how can I add more? The question is, how can this work with less input? True scale reduces dependence. Dependence on time. Dependence on energy. Dependence on constant decision-making. When a system scales correctly, output increases while strain decreases. That's the signal. If growth makes life harder, structure is missing. If growth makes life calmer, systems are maturing. Cash flow mastery teaches you to watch strain carefully. Strain in finances, strain in attention, strain in sleep. These are early warning signs. Wealth that costs peace is not wealth. It's deferred burnout. Scaling correctly means reinforcing foundations before expansion. Strengthen buffers, deepen redundancy, increase predictability. Only then does growth become sustainable. This is why wealthy systems look slow from the outside and unstoppable from the inside. They don't chase opportunity. They absorb it, because their structure can handle more weight. In the next chapter, we'll talk about something rarely acknowledged: exit, not quitting, but the ability to step away without collapse. Because real cash flow mastery is not about staying forever. It's about having the option to leave. Chapter 16. The ability to exit is the ultimate test of freedom. Not escape, not collapse. Exit. Most people build lives they can't step away from. Their income demands presence. Their lifestyle demands performance. Their obligations demand consistency. They are trapped inside what they built. Cash flow mastery reverses that. It designs life so that absence does not equal failure. so that stepping back does not mean everything breaks. This is the difference between ownership and obligation. If you cannot pause without panic, you do not own the system. The system owns you. Mastery asks a dangerous question. If I disappeared for 6 months, what would continue? That question reveals everything. Weak systems collapse immediately. Strong systems degrade slowly. Mastered systems adapt. Exit optionality is not about quitting work. It's about removing desperation. When you know you could walk away, you negotiate differently. You choose differently. You live differently. Fear disappears, and fearlessness changes behavior at a fundamental level. Cash flow mastery builds this by separating income from identity. You are not what you earn. You are not what you manage. You are not what you maintain daily. You are the architect, not the engine. When you internalize that, you stop over-attaching to output. You focus on durability instead. In the next chapter, we'll explore a hidden shift that happens once exit becomes possible. A shift in how you view time, effort, and meaning. Because money mastery eventually becomes life mastery. Chapter 17. When exit becomes possible, time changes shape. Hours stop feeling scarce. Days stop feeling hunted. Weeks stop blurring together. Because urgency was never about time itself. It was about dependency. When your survival depends on constant output, time feels sharp. Every pause feels dangerous. Every rest feels earned. Every slowdown feels like failure. Cash flow mastery softens time, not by removing responsibility, but by removing desperation. And once desperation fades, a deeper question surfaces. What is this all for? Most people never reach this question because they're too busy surviving. But when systems handle survival, meaning becomes visible. This is where money stops being the goal. It becomes a tool for alignment. You begin choosing work differently, relationships differently, rhythms differently, not because you're rich, but because you're stable. Stability creates honesty. You stop lying to yourself about what you enjoy. You stop tolerating what drains you. You stop chasing validation through output. Cash flow mastery reveals preference, and preference shapes life. This is why true wealth often looks quieter than expected. Less urgency, less proving, more selectivity. The wealthy don't fill time. They protect it. They know time is the only asset that doesn't regenerate. Money systems exist to defend time, not consume it. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about legacy, not inheritance, but behavioral legacy. Because cash flow mastery is not just something you use, it's something you pass on through example. And most people pass on chaos without realizing it. Chapter 18. Legacy is rarely intentional. That's the problem. Most people don't pass down wisdom. They pass down habits. They don't teach systems. They demonstrate reactions. Children don't learn money from lectures. They learn it from watching stress, from overhearing arguments, from sensing fear around bills, work, and time. Chaos teaches chaos. Cash flow mastery breaks that cycle quietly. When money is calm, homes are calmer. When finances are structured, conversations soften. When pressure fades, presence increases. This is legacy in motion, not numbers left behind, but patterns reshaped. When you operate from systems instead of survival, you teach others without words. You show that money doesn't have to be dramatic. That work doesn't have to be desperate. That planning creates peace. That example is powerful because it rewires expectation. Children raised around financial calm don't associate adulthood with anxiety. Partners living inside structured systems don't associate love with pressure. Cash flow mastery doesn't just change outcomes, it changes atmosphere. And atmosphere shapes belief. Belief shapes behavior. Behavior shapes generations. This is why mastering cash flow is not selfish. It's stabilizing. It reduces noise. It reduces fear. It reduces inherited stress. And once you see that, the motivation deepens. You're no longer building just for yourself. You're building a pattern worth repeating. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about one final internal shift. The shift from accumulation to stewardship. Because once systems are stable, your role changes. And that change defines the final stage of mastery. Chapter 19. At the highest level, money stops being something you chase. It becomes something you steward. This is the final internal shift most people never reach. Accumulation is driven by hunger. Stewardship is driven by responsibility. When systems are unstable, accumulation feels urgent. You want more because you fear less. But when systems are strong, urgency dissolves, and in its place appears a different question. What deserves this flow? This is where cash flow mastery matures. You stop measuring success by how much you can gather and start measuring it by how well you can allocate. Money becomes directional. It flows toward what lasts, what aligns, what strengthens life, not just lifestyle. Stewardship means understanding that money amplifies intent. If intent is shallow, money magnifies emptiness. If intent is grounded, money magnifies impact. This is why many people who suddenly earn more feel strangely dissatisfied. They solve the money problem before solving the meaning problem. Cash flow mastery reverses that order. It stabilizes first, clarifies second, deploys last. Stewardship is calm. There is no rush, no proving, no comparison. You know your system works. You know your needs are covered. You know your future is buffered. So decisions slow down. And slower decisions are better decisions. You don't chase every opportunity. You don't fear missing out. You don't say yes by default. You choose, and choice is the true reward. In the next chapter, we'll address a quiet fear that often appears at this stage, the fear of losing momentum. Because when urgency disappears, some people worry they'll become complacent. But mastery doesn't remove drive. It refines it. And understanding that difference is what protects everything you've built. Chapter 20. Momentum does not come from panic. It comes from alignment. Most people believe urgency is what keeps them sharp. They fear that without pressure, they'll drift. That without fear, discipline will fade. That belief is understandable because fear did push them early on. But fear is a poor long-term engine. It burns hot. It burns fast. And eventually, it burns everything around it. Cash flow mastery replaces fear-driven momentum with clarity-driven consistency. You don't move because you're afraid to stop. You move because the direction makes sense. This is a quieter kind of drive. It doesn't shout. It doesn't rush. It doesn't collapse under stress. It endures. At this stage, discipline stops feeling like force. It feels like identity. You don't save because you should. You save because it's who you are. You don't protect cash flow because you're anxious. You protect it because you understand consequence. This is where mastery becomes effortless. Not because effort disappears, but because resistance does. You're no longer fighting yourself. And when internal friction drops, progress becomes sustainable. In the next chapter, we're going to zoom out, beyond tactics, beyond systems. We'll look at the philosophical shift that separates people who use money from people who are quietly ruled by it. Because cash flow mastery is not about control alone. It's about relationship. And the relationship you build with money determines whether it becomes a servant or a master. Chapter 21. Your relationship with money is always speaking, even when you're silent. It speaks through urgency, through avoidance, through obsession, through calm. Most people don't realize they are in a reactive relationship with money. They respond to it like weather. Good month, relief. Bad month, tension. Unexpected expense, panic. That is not partnership. That is dependence. Cash flow mastery transforms the relationship from emotional to intentional. Money stops being something that happens to you. It becomes something you direct. This is the moment money becomes a servant. A servant is reliable, predictable, bound by rules. A master is emotional, demanding, unforgiving. If money controls your mood, your schedule, your sense of worth, it is your master. If money quietly executes your design, protects your time, and supports your priorities, it is your servant. The shift is subtle, but absolute. You stop asking money for validation. You stop asking it to soothe insecurity. You stop asking it to prove anything. Money becomes functional, and functionality is freedom. This is why cash flow mastery is not flashy. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't posture. It doesn't beg for recognition. It simply works. And because it works, life opens up. In the next chapter, we'll talk about the final practical layer of mastery, maintenance. Because systems are not set and forget forever. They require care, but the right kind of care. And understanding that difference is what prevents decay without creating obsession. Chapter 22. Maintenance is not micromanagement. This is where many people slip backward without realizing it. They either ignore their systems completely or they obsess over them endlessly. Both extremes weaken mastery. Cash flow mastery requires periodic attention, not constant interference. Think of your financial systems like a well-built machine. If you check it every minute, you create anxiety. If you never check it at all, you invite decay. The middle path is where stability lives. Scheduled review, intentional adjustment, then release. That rhythm preserves clarity without creating fixation. Most people fear maintenance because they associate it with stress, but stress came from chaos, not care. Maintenance done correctly is calm. You're not reacting. You're observing. You're asking questions like, is flow still aligned with values? Have expenses quietly crept upward? Are systems still reducing effort or increasing it? These are neutral questions. They carry no shame. Cash flow mastery eliminates drama around correction. You adjust without panic. You refine without guilt. You change without identity crisis, because systems are tools, not morals. This is where people who never mastered money get stuck. They tie self-worth to outcomes. They take fluctuations personally. They interpret adjustment as failure. Mastery does the opposite. It treats correction as competence. A system that never needs adjustment is either tiny or neglected. Growth requires tuning, and tuning does not require obsession. This balance, care without control, is rare. But once learned, it protects everything you've built. In the next chapter, we approach the final transformation, the moment where cash flow mastery stops being something you do and becomes something you are. Because identity is the final system, and it determines whether everything you've learned sticks or slowly fades. Chapter 23. Identity is the final system. Everything before this, the tracking, the structure, the patience, the flow, was preparation. Because no system survives an identity that contradicts it. If you still see yourself as someone who is bad with money, you will sabotage structure. If you still see yourself as someone who earns and spends, you will drift back to reaction. Cash flow mastery becomes permanent only when it becomes self-concept. You are no longer someone trying to manage money. You are someone who designs flow. You don't hope things work out. You expect systems to perform. This identity is calm, unemotional, grounded, and it changes how you move through the world. You stop explaining yourself. You stop comparing timelines. You stop measuring worth through income. You know who you are. You are someone who builds quietly and lets time do the talking. This is why true mastery is invisible. No announcement, no performance, no validation needed. Just consistency. And consistency reshapes reality. At this stage, money stops being a source of identity and becomes a reflection of it. Ordered mind, ordered systems, ordered flow, chaos no longer fits. You feel it immediately when something is misaligned, not emotionally, structurally, and you correct it without drama. That's when mastery is complete. In the next chapter, we move toward closure, not an ending, a handoff. Because the purpose of this audiobook was never to give you answers. It was to give you a framework that keeps answering questions long after this ends. And how you carry it forward will define everything that comes next. Chapter 24. This is the moment most audiobooks rush through. We won't. Because what happens after understanding is more important than understanding itself. You now know that cash flow mastery is not a tactic, not a trick, not a shortcut. It is a way of seeing. You see money as movement, not possession. You see income as fuel, not identity. You see systems as protection, not restriction. And because you see differently, you will act differently, even when you're not thinking about it. That's how you know this has landed. The real test of mastery is not what you do tomorrow. It's what you stop doing without effort. You stop reacting. You stop chasing. You stop negotiating with chaos. You don't need to force discipline anymore. The environment you built enforces it for you. This is the quiet power most people never reach. They want motivation. You built inevitability. They want confidence. You built structure. They want freedom. You built calm. And calm is what allows wealth to last. Before we close this journey, take a moment not to feel inspired, but to feel steady. That steadiness is the signal. It means your nervous system recognizes safety. It means your mind recognizes order. It means your future recognizes alignment. You are no longer chasing money, you are directing it. And direction changes destiny. In the final chapter, we'll bring everything together. Not with hype, not with promises, but with one final frame. A way to carry cash flow mastery forward long after this audiobook ends. Because mastery is not something you finish. It's something you live. Chapter 25. Here's the final truth. Cash flow mastery is not about money. Money was just the mirror. What you actually built was a way of thinking that refuses chaos, a structure that replaces fear with clarity, a system that protects your future without demanding your constant attention. You learn to think in systems, not salaries, to design flow instead of chasing pay, to build calm instead of feeding urgency. And that shift will quietly follow you everywhere, in work, in relationships, in decisions that once felt heavy but now feel obvious. Because when you understand flow, you stop forcing outcomes. You design conditions and let results arrive naturally. This is what it means to turn money into your servant. It doesn't shout. It doesn't impress strangers. It doesn't seek approval. It shows up on time. It does its job. And it gives you something most people never experience: peace. Not the absence of ambition, but the absence of panic. And from that place, real ambition finally becomes possible. As this audiobook comes to a close, don't rush to do anything. Let the framework settle. Notice how you think about money tomorrow. Notice what no longer triggers you. Notice how decisions feel quieter. That quiet is mastery taking root. If this audiobook shifted how you see money, even slightly, consider liking it as a personal contract with yourself. Not to hustle harder, but to think cleaner. And if a particular idea stayed with you, share it in the comments. Not for validation, but to mark the moment you stopped thinking in salaries and started thinking in systems. If you want to continue this journey together, subscribe, not as a follower, but as someone committed to long-term clarity. And before you go, one final question. What should the next audiobook explore? Because mastery doesn't end here. It evolves. And the next chapter is the one you design next. Chapter 26. There is a moment that comes after mastery begins to settle. A quiet moment. You're no longer anxious about money. You're no longer obsessed with it either. And suddenly, you notice how loud the world is about it. Everyone is chasing. Everyone is comparing. Everyone is reacting to headlines, trends, opinions, fear. And you feel slightly out of place. That's normal. Because once you master cash flow, you stop moving at the speed of noise. You move at the speed of intention. This is where discernment becomes your new discipline. You no longer need every opportunity. You no longer chase every return. You no longer react to every warning. You ask one simple question before any financial decision. Does this strengthen my system or introduce fragility? That question filters everything. It protects you from hype. It shields you from urgency. It keeps your life light. Cash flow mastery at this level is not about doing more. It's about saying no. Cleanly. No to pressure. No to complexity. No to decisions that look smart but feel heavy. Your money becomes quieter because you become quieter. And quiet people see farther. Chapter 27. Now comes a skill that separates long-term masters from short-term winners. Constraint. Most people think freedom means removing limits. In reality, freedom comes from choosing them. Cash flow mastery teaches you to place intentional constraints on yourself, not because you lack discipline, but because you respect momentum. You cap lifestyle growth. You cap risk exposure. You cap how much attention money is allowed to take. Why? Because unlimited options dilute focus. The wealthiest systems in the world are constrained by design. They grow within boundaries. They expand only when structure is ready. Constraint preserves elegance. It keeps systems understandable. It keeps decisions repeatable. It keeps stress from sneaking back in through complexity. This is why your best financial decisions often feel slightly boring. They don't spike emotion. They don't impress strangers. They don't demand explanation. They simply work. And work that repeats quietly is the foundation of real freedom. Chapter 28. At this stage, something subtle happens. You stop fantasizing about someday. Not because you lack ambition, but because your present is stable enough to enjoy. Cash flow mastery collapses the gap between now and later. You don't postpone life until some future number. You don't delay peace until some milestone. You build systems that support today while still compounding for tomorrow. This is where balance stops being a myth. You don't burn the present to fund the future. You don't sacrifice the future to decorate the present. You design both to coexist. And when that happens, money stops being the center of life. It becomes infrastructure, like electricity, like plumbing, important, invisible, reliable. That's when you know you've crossed a threshold. Chapter 29. Let's talk about fear. One last time. Not the loud kind, the quiet one. The fear of losing what you've built. This fear shows up after success, after stability, after calm, and if unmanaged, it can freeze growth. Cash flow mastery does not eliminate fear. It reframes it. Fear becomes a signal, not a stop sign. You don't ask, what if I lose everything? You ask, what redundancy protects me if something breaks? You don't panic. You reinforce buffers, diversification, optionality, not emotional defense, structural defense. This is why mastery feels grounded, not brittle. Your confidence doesn't come from optimism. It comes from preparation. And preparation allows you to keep moving forward without gambling your peace. Chapter 30. Now you begin to see others differently, not with judgment, with understanding. You recognize the signs of salary thinking instantly. The stress, the urgency, the emotional spending, the endless motion with no direction. And you resist the urge to convince, because mastery doesn't argue. It demonstrates. You become an example without preaching, a reference point without explanation, and sometimes, quietly, someone will ask you a question that reveals everything. How are you so calm about money? You won't have a dramatic answer. You'll simply say something like, I stopped chasing income and started designing flow. That sentence alone can change lives. Chapter 31. At the highest level, cash flow mastery teaches one final lesson. Enough. You learn what enough looks like for you. Not socially, not comparatively, not hypothetically, personally. Enough income, enough flow, enough complexity, enough ambition. And once you know you're enough, you become untouchable. No one can pressure you upward. No one can shame you sideways. No one can rush you forward. You move on your own timeline. That is wealth, not excess, not domination. Sufficiency with control. And that is rare. Chapter 32. Final extension chapter. This audiobook was never about turning you into someone else. It was about removing what was never you to begin with. The panic, the noise, the false urgency, the belief that money must be dramatic to matter. You now understand something most people never will. That wealth is not a number. It's a system that gives you back your nervous system. That freedom is not escape. It's structure done well. That money becomes powerful only when it stops being emotional. If you carry nothing else forward, carry this. A life designed around calm will always outperform a life designed around pressure. Cash flow mastery is simply the financial expression of that truth. And now, the system is yours, not to obsess over, not to worship, but to live inside, quietly, steadily, deliberately. This audiobook ends here, but the mastery does not. It begins every time you choose structure over chaos, systems over salaries, and calm over noise. Chapter 33. There is a phase after mastery that very few people talk about: integration. It's the moment when cash flow mastery stops feeling like a system and starts feeling like common sense. You don't think about money strategy every day anymore. You don't rehearse rules in your head. You don't double-check yourself with anxiety. You simply act, and the actions are aligned. This is how you know the framework has integrated. You pause naturally before expanding expenses. You instinctively protect flow before indulging comfort. You sense imbalance before it becomes a problem, not because you're rigid, but because your intuition has been trained. Cash flow mastery rewires instinct, and instinct, once trained, moves faster than logic. That's when life begins to feel lighter. Not easier, lighter, because fewer decisions weigh on you, fewer mistakes repeat themselves, fewer regrets accumulate. You are no longer good with money. You are simply clear, and clarity is effortless. Chapter 34. At this level, a new temptation appears. Over-optimization. You realize how powerful systems are, and part of you wants to perfect everything, every percentage, every flow, every return. But mastery teaches restraint here too. Because optimization without purpose becomes obsession. Cash flow mastery is not about squeezing life for efficiency. It's about freeing life for meaning. You optimize what creates leverage. You leave the rest human. You accept imperfection where it doesn't matter. You preserve energy for what does. This balance is subtle, but it's what separates peaceful mastery from anxious control. The goal is not to dominate money. The goal is to make it boring. When money is boring, life gets interesting. Chapter 35. Something else shifts now. Your relationship with work. You stop working to escape fear. You stop working to justify worth. You stop working to outrun uncertainty. You begin working selectively on problems that matter, on projects that align, on efforts that feel clean. Cash flow mastery does not remove ambition. It removes desperation, and ambition without desperation is powerful. You can take longer paths. You can say no to misaligned opportunities. You can walk away from good money that costs too much life, because your system supports patience, and patience attracts quality. Chapter 36. Now comes a moment of quiet pride, not arrogance, not performance, recognition. You realize that a version of you from years ago would not recognize your calm. They lived inside urgency, inside pressure, inside constant mental noise. And here you are now, thinking clearly, choosing deliberately, sleeping better. This is not luck. This is architecture. You built something invisible that protects you every day. And once you recognize that, gratitude replaces striving. You stop asking, what's next? Out of restlessness and start asking it out of curiosity. That difference changes everything. Chapter 37. Let's address a final misconception. That cash flow mastery makes you conservative. In reality, it makes you precise. You are not afraid of risk. You are allergic to chaos. You still move forward. You still invest. You still build. But you do so with margin. Margin for error. Margin for rest, margin for change. Margin is the hidden superpower. People without margin must be right. People with margin can adapt, and adaptation always outlasts certainty. Chapter 38. As time passes, something beautiful happens. You forget what financial panic felt like. Not because life is perfect, but because your system absorbs shock. Problems become events, not crises. Setbacks become data, not identity. Mistakes become adjustments, not shame. This emotional resilience is the quiet dividend of cash flow mastery. It doesn't show up on statements, but it shapes your entire experience of life. You move slower, but you move farther. Chapter 39. And now, one final reflection. The world will never stop telling you that more is the answer. More income, more speed, more pressure, more complexity. You now know better. You know that clarity beats chaos, that structure beats hustle, that flow beats force. You know that money is most powerful when it disappears into the background of a well-designed life. If you ever feel yourself drifting back into urgency, return to the first principle. Design before desire. Systems before salaries. Calm before expansion. That principle will always bring you home. This audiobook does not end with motivation. It ends with orientation. You know where true north is now. And once you know that, you never wander for long. Chapter 40. At some point, you realize something quietly powerful. You are no longer trying to win money. You are cooperating with it. There is no tension in the relationship anymore, no arm wrestling, no constant proving. Money flows because it has somewhere to go. It stays because it has a purpose. It grows because it is treated with respect, not desperation. This is the level where mastery feels almost invisible. You don't introduce yourself as someone financially disciplined. You don't think in terms of rules. You simply don't do certain things anymore. You don't expand obligations casually. You don't ignore small leaks. You don't let excitement override structure. Not because you're strict, but because misalignment feels uncomfortable now. Just like eating junk after months of eating clean. Just like chaos after order. Your standards have changed, and standards are stronger than willpower. Chapter 41. Let's talk about uncertainty, because life will always bring it. Markets shift, technology changes, opportunities disappear, new risks appear. Cash flow mastery does not pretend certainty exists. It assumes uncertainty is permanent, and that assumption makes it resilient. Instead of asking, "How do I predict the future?" you ask, "How do I stay stable no matter what the future does?" That's a better question. You build optionality. You diversify dependency. You maintain liquidity where it matters, not out of fear, but out of realism. This is why mastered systems don't break under surprise. They bend, and bending is survival. Chapter 42. There is a strange side effect of mastery. You become less impressed by extremes, extreme wealth, extreme hustle, extreme lifestyles. You see the cost behind the display, the pressure, the fragility, the hidden dependency. You no longer envy what requires constant maintenance. You value sustainability more than spectacle. And that makes you immune to most marketing, most social pressure, most comparison traps. Because you know the truth. What looks exciting often hides instability. What looks boring often hides freedom. And freedom has its own quiet glow. Chapter 43. Now, something important. Cash flow mastery does not mean you never struggle again. It means struggle doesn't own you. You still face challenges, you still make mistakes, you still adapt. But you do so from a position of steadiness, not panic, not shame, not identity collapse. Mistakes become information. Setbacks become recalibration. Losses become lessons, not verdicts. This emotional stability is the real dividend. Money just pay the tuition. Chapter 44. Eventually, people will ask you for advice, not because you advertise it, but because calm attracts questions. When they do, you won't overwhelm them. You'll say something simple. Start by seeing where your money actually goes. Build systems before chasing more. Design for calm, not speed. And if they listen, great. If they don't, that's fine too. Mastery does not need agreement. It continues either way. Chapter 45. One last reminder worth repeating. Cash flow mastery is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming unburdened. Unburdened by constant decisions, unburdened by financial noise, unburdened by pressure disguised as ambition. What remains is clarity, and clarity changes how life feels. You walk slower, but with direction. You plan less, but more effectively. You want less, but enjoy more. This is not minimalism. This is alignment. Chapter 46. And finally, this. There will be moments in the future when old patterns try to return, moments of urgency, moments of comparison, moments where chaos looks tempting again. When that happens, don't fight it emotionally. Return to structure. Ask, where is flow misaligned? Where did complexity creep in? Where did attention drift? Correct calmly. That is mastery in motion. No drama, no self-judgment, just adjustment. And adjustment, repeated, is how mastery stays alive. This is not the end of the audiobook. It's the end of needing one. Because from here on, the system guides you. Quietly, reliably, and on your terms. Chapter 47. Eventually, you notice something subtle but profound. Your sense of urgency has been replaced by readiness. You're not waiting. You're not rushing. You're simply prepared. Prepared for opportunity. Prepared for disruption. Prepared for change. Cash flow mastery creates this state because it removes fragility. Fragile systems fear surprises. Resilient systems expect them. When money is structured, surprises become adjustments, not emergencies. And when emergencies disappear, confidence becomes quiet. You don't announce it. You don't defend it. You carry it. That confidence changes how you speak, how you decide, how you walk away when something doesn't feel right. It's not arrogance. It's grounding. Chapter 48. There's a reason calm people seem harder to manipulate. They don't need quick wins. They don't need approval. They don't need urgency manufactured for them. Cash flow mastery immunizes you against pressure. Pressure to buy. Pressure to invest. Pressure to prove. Because pressure feeds on instability. When your system is stable, pressure loses leverage. You stop reacting to deadlines that aren't yours. You stop rushing into decisions you don't understand. You stop confusing motion with progress. This is where your life becomes harder to hijack, and that is priceless. Chapter 49. At some point, you realize that freedom is not loud. It doesn't arrive with fireworks. It doesn't demand celebration. It simply shows up as space. Space in your calendar, space in your mind, space between impulse and action. That space is where wisdom lives. Most people never experience it because they fill every gap with noise. Cash flow mastery creates silence on purpose. And in that silence, you finally hear yourself, not your fear. Now, let's anchor this permanently. If everything you've heard begins to blur over time, return to this single sentence. Design your life so that money supports calm, not urgency. If a decision increases urgency, question it. If a choice adds complexity without leverage, pause. If growth demands panic, refuse it. That sentence will always realign you because calm is not laziness. Calm is capacity. And capacity is what lets you build something that lasts. Chapter 53. This is where we truly close, not with intensity, not with hype, with orientation. You now know what to look for. You know the feel of alignment. You know the smell of chaos. You know when money is serving you and when it's trying to rule you. From here on, mastery is maintenance. Quiet. Simple. human. You don't need to remember every word of this audiobook. You only need to remember how it made you think. Because once your thinking changes, your systems follow. And once your systems follow, your life becomes lighter. That is cash flow mastery, and it's yours to keep.